Fox News alert, the House about to vote on the tax reform bill before sending it to the Senate. As we wait for the White House briefing to get underway, hello everyone, I'm Dana Perino and this is the Daily Briefing. $1.5 trillion in tax cuts on the line, and Republicans are confident they have the votes for final passage tonight in the Senate. Peter Doocy is live on Capitol Hill. Peter, what I saw there with Speaker Ryan just a moment ago as he gave what he probably thinks is the most important speech of his life. He really thinks that this is a career moment for him, but he said it's a generational defining moment as well. What are you hearing?
Dana, that's what the word has been from his staff for the last couple of days. In fact, they've been circulating a clip of him from when he was a freshman congressman, and he looks much, much younger, where he's talking about what's about to happen, this big-time tax reform that he says that he has studied, that he has always sought, and now it appears in the House that they have the votes to make it happen while he is the Speaker. So he's obviously come a long way from being the freshman congressman and then the Ways and Means Committee chairman. But Democrats are on the floor, and they are still trying to whip up supporters and also the protesters that you could hear there screaming and interrupting and trying to disrupt the proceedings with talk like this.
It's a scam, and the American people know it. Is this bill about helping people who are living paycheck to paycheck? Hell no! Is this bill going to bring back jobs and lift up the middle class? Hell no!
So Democrats still trying to cast this as something only the rich will benefit from, but Republicans see it totally differently. They think that any bad talk about the tax bill that constituents have been hearing is just because certain pundits have been cherry-picking statistics. They think instead this is something that is going to affect just about everybody in the country in a good way.
Today, we are giving the people their money back. The bottom line here is the typical family making the median income in America will get a $2,059 tax cut next year alone.
This is something that Republicans have been talking about since the beginning of President Trump's term 11 months ago, and it does appear to be ready to advance out of the House within about 20 or 25 minutes, Dana.
That is actually pretty interesting. You have President Trump's #1 agenda item and Paul Ryan's #1 career goal converging, and it looks like the Republicans have the votes. Just for people to know, what you're looking at the screen is the vote total for the motion, and then we expect in this hour we will get to the actual vote on tax reform, so we'll have that final vote for you this hour. Peter, before I let you go, do Republicans worry a bit about stepping on their tax reform win by getting into a knockdown, drag-em-out fight over the end-of-year spending bill?
That is something that there's a lot of anticipation about. So Republicans that we've been talking to on their way into the House chamber have been excited to go vote for this, but nobody really knows what exactly is going to happen with this spending bill, especially because leadership is insisting now on putting this $81 billion supplemental disaster recovery for victims of Harvey and Irma and some of the other big enormously expensive natural disasters that have happened over the last couple of months. And that is something that, if it's not offset, conservative members of the House are not likely to go for. In fact, I was just talking to one member of Congress, a conservative, who said that this morning Congressman Tom Cole stood up and he was also raising concerns about these CSR payments, the federal subsidy to keep Obamacare alive, essentially. And that's something else that is going to be a big problem. So they're focused on this right now, this tax vote that looks like it'll go to the House in 20 minutes or so, and then the Senate at some point tonight after it's dark. But come Thursday, Friday, nobody really knows exactly what happens. And if they don't figure it out, there's going to be a government shutdown on Saturday, Dana.
Okay, and then I guess we'll be working. Thank you so much,
like
Peter. Appreciate this. For more on this, we bring in South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott. And, sir, I imagine that it feels good as a Republican to look across the Congress there and see that your House colleagues are going to pass that bill today. And I understand that you believe in the Senate side that you'll have the votes on for the Republicans as well. But in some ways, the work only is just beginning. Let me just show you two polls of the popularity of the bill. Monmouth University says that only 26% of people in their poll strongly or somewhat approve of the tax reform plan, and that only 17% say it's a genuine attempt to reform the tax system. So your sales job will begin when you get home after this vote.
I'm looking forward to it. If you look back to the 1986 tax reform package, what you'll find is that the polls were very consistent then with where they are now. So the good news is that hopefully 31 years from now, when we're looking back on the tax reform package, we'll find that the American people are excited about the last tax reform in 2017 and looking forward to the next one, hopefully before 31 years. So we're in good position to go home and talk about single moms getting a 70 to 75% cut in their taxes. The typical American family making around $73,000 a year getting a 60% cut in their taxes. The good news is this tax reform debate can end in February when you start looking at your paycheck. Is it higher or is it not?
That's what I was wondering. And as we're looking right there, Kevin McCarthy, the House Majority Leader, just in Statuary Hall, I'm assuming getting ready to go in and cast his vote for the bill. One thing I was curious about is I think everybody gets to go home to their constituents and talk about something. Republicans will talk about what they consider to be a good year and ending on a high note. Democrats will go home and say, as Nancy Pelosi said, that this is the worst bill to ever come to the floor of the House. The worst, that sounds like a lot. My question for you is, I don't know who wins on the politics, but would you rather win on the economics?
Absolutely. Here's the question that you've just posed, and I think it's the right question. Will the average American family, the average American worker, be better off in a global competition to move their jobs from this country and to perhaps stymie their wages as we have seen in the last 8 years? The answer is emphatically yes. The average American worker and the typical American family will both be better off because of this tax reform legislation passing. And I think ultimately good policy will sooner or later lead to good politics.
In the two big elections that we've had in the last few months, Virginia and Alabama, Virginia gubernatorial and Alabama, the special Senate election, both of those wins showed strong Democratic wins and support with suburban women and African Americans. Is there something that you think in this policy that you're about to pass that will actually help win them over to the Republican side before the midterms?
Absolutely. I think if you think about the efforts of Mike Lee, Marco Rubio on the child tax credit, focusing more of our time and energy on making sure that the average family has more refundable portion of that tax credit, that speaks directly to families that are working and living paycheck to paycheck. Think about the Susan Collins of the world in our party who fought very hard to make sure that the property tax assault solution was a part of the bill. We have found a way to make sure that we had wins for the moderate income earner to the middle income earner.
Senator Scott, I know that in the spring it is likely that the Republicans will turn their attention to some entitlement reform, but specifically on Medicaid. Are you concerned that you will be vulnerable to questions of why the corporations got such a great tax cut, and yet we are looking at taking away money, this is their words, taking away money from the people who need it most? Shouldn't that have been part of the consideration during the tax bill?
There's a technical glitch called PAYGO that has suggested that there would be a lowering of the Medicaid dollars. We have waived that 16 times in the past. We will waive it again this time. It will have no impact on Medicaid. As it relates to our corporations, the real question is, over the last 10 years or so, according to an E&Y study, over 4,700 companies are no longer American companies, in part because of our corrosive tax policy. In other words, we can create more jobs here at home by bringing that corporate tax rate into a position where we are competitive with our global competitors.
That's certainly the hope. All right, Senator Tim Scott, thank you for being here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. We now bring in Fox News senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram. So is it fun, historic day? I mean, sometimes it's sort of boring, every day on the Hill, but today is one of those days that you really want to talk to somebody like Chad Pergram. What do you know?
Well, right now they are on the vote series. This is the first vote of this vote series, and the vote that's going to come up here, probably about 220, 225, is going to be the actual vote on tax reform. Now, when they move this bill, a similar bill, through the House of Representatives, the original bill in mid-November, Republicans lost 13 on their own. I'm told that the vote count should be similar. They might even lose a few fewer on this particular vote, and it will be passed by the House of Representatives. They will then move to the Senate. There are 10 hours of debate, 5 per side, but we don't expect them to take all that time. We're hearing that they could have a final vote on the tax bill late tonight in the Senate, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then the House and Senate will be in alignment. They will have passed both versions, the same version of the tax bill, and it goes to President Trump to sign. This is a big day on Capitol Hill. This is something that Republicans have pushed for a long time. It's something that House Speaker Paul Ryan has pushed for since he came to Congress. You know, he was the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, the Tax Writing Committee. But Dana, the key here is what goes on in the years down the road. What does this bill look like in the years down the road? What sort of residual effect is in the economy? Do taxpayers like it? Are they able actually to fill out their taxes and file on a postcard, as Kevin Brady suggested? I always say that legislating is a lot like making wine. It's not like making sausage. They put it in the bottle today, and they'll open it up 4 or 5 years from now, and they'll get a whiff of that bouquet and say, is this a nice Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon? Or will they say, this is swill? We just don't know yet. It takes a few years for legislation to pan out to see if it's really good wine or if it's bad wine.
Well, Chad Pergram, there's no one better on Capitol Hill to follow, so thank you for being here today. We'll check back in with you. So Republicans on the verge of this historic tax cuts as we wait for the final House vote on the tax bill. Our political panel will join us with reaction. We are awaiting a vote in the House just minutes from now on the landmark Republican tax reform bill. Daniel Henninger is Deputy Editorial Page Director of the Wall Street Journal and a Fox News contributor. You had a chance to watch Speaker Paul Ryan earlier when he was giving the last speech before calling for the vote, and we had similar thoughts. I'll let you describe them.
Well, Dana, that's right. I mean, this is a big day, make no mistake about it. And one name that gets evoked, of course, is Ronald Reagan, the Reagan tax cuts of the 1980s. But there's one other name we should mention, and that's Jack Kemp, the former congressman from Buffalo, who really was Paul Ryan's mentor, political mentor. And Paul Ryan went to work for him back in the early 1990s. And remember that Jack Kemp was the author of the 1981 tax cut, the so-called Kemp-Roth tax cut. And Jack Kemp always argued that the purpose of these tax cuts really wasn't merely to enrich the rich, corporations, but it was to push money down into the middle class. And you saw that conveyed so clearly in Paul Ryan's remarks, that it's not just about business getting ahead, it's about everybody getting ahead. And that's what Jack Kemp stood for. And I think Paul Ryan really, Dana, has been working his entire career to get to this day.
Honestly, I thought that maybe this speech for him today was possibly more important to him than when he gave his vice presidential speech at the convention in 2012.
Oh, I don't think any question. I mean, Jack Kemp was Bob Dole's running mate, recall,
right.
So they both had that in common as well.
I had in 1996, I had a Dole Kemp T-shirt, and I wore it for like 3 years when I lived in England. I think people thought I was maybe a little crazy.
Well, I think Ryan is just thrilled that after the passage of the 81 tax cut, he himself is now going to be responsible.
And what if this idea that President Trump's #1 priority was to bring back jobs to America, get this tax cut done? This happens, and it also happens to be Paul Ryan's career achievement. I mean, and these two men were actually kind of at odds for most of the year, and yet now they're working in concert and accomplish something together.
Yeah, it is an interesting irony. I mean, Jack Kemp used to call himself a bleeding heart conservative. I don't know whether Paul Ryan would adopt that idea. But both Ryan and Trump, I think, basically are singing from the same hymnal in the sense that they want the economy to grow, and in their minds, the economy just doesn't mean increasing business profits or enriching stock options and that sort of thing. It's spreading the benefits of something like that out into the general economy, raising wages again. I mean, that's who Donald Trump appealed to when he was running for election, was this sort of lower middle class people, and that's who Paul Ryan is talking about.
What if the Democrats, though, are right on the politics and are successful in convincing people that this has just been a tax cut for the rich, and that it's only not going to help middle class families, and maybe if the economics don't bear out? I mean, at that point, what have we done?
Well, we've tried, for one thing. I mean, you know, the Democrats, there is no Democrat there you can find who will give you an alternative plan. The Democrats are interesting. By their own admission, they have no really substantive ideas at the moment to present to the American people. So now their position is all we do is cite public opinion polls about this tax cut and say the American people don't like it, ergo it's going to fail. I think, especially in the Senate, where you have some of these moderates like Joe Manchin, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp, who are going to vote against this bill tonight, have got to be worried that if a year from now or so we start to show the economic benefits of this, all these Democrats will be standing as mere bystanders to what happened here this month.
Later on the show, we will have Congressman Josh Gottheimer, is a Democrat who is on the Problem Solvers Caucus, and he says he did have an alternative, but I don't think anybody on the Democratic side was listening to him, but we will on this show. Can I ask you about something else that is important as we look to foreign policy for just a moment? And that is North Korea. And I wanted to show you this. Over the last few days, you had an increasing drumbeat of information from the Trump administration about North Korea. Look.
The United States will not allow the regime in Pyongyang to hold the world hostage. We will continue to hold North Korea accountable for its reckless and threatening behavior today and in the future.
America and its allies will take all necessary steps to achieve a denuclearization and ensure that this regime cannot threaten the world.
What is the administration trying to communicate here with this, the last several days? Not necessarily new information, but I think increasing in its importance.
Yeah, I think, Dana, there's an extremely high-stakes game of political strategy taking place right here. And I think the message that the administration was trying to send out to its allies around the world is that, look, this is what North Korea is capable of. I mean, the WannaCry virus was extraordinarily damaging. And I would say it's the equivalent of North Korea sending ballistic missiles across Japan. They sent out this cyber attack into the world. And what I think the United States is trying to do right now is gather its allies to participate in ratcheting up the economic sanctions against North Korea. Very difficult thing to do because the North Koreans are extremely adept smugglers, and they've had an easy time getting some other countries to participate in that smuggling directly or indirectly, including China. And I think what the United States is trying to do is convince countries in Asia, and including in Europe, that you have to ratchet down harder and harder, or economic sanctions aren't going to work against North Korea. And this is one of the reasons they're giving the world to do that.
In the last minute that I have, could you comment on this story that Politico broke yesterday about this Project Cassandra, which was a drug enforcement agency mission, and its involvement with Hezbollah, and the possibility and the accusation that the Obama administration eased off on that enforcement in order to preserve the Iran nuclear deal?
Big story. I mean, possibly a big story. The Iranians supposedly being involved in drug running out of Colombia and Venezuela into the Middle East, funding Hezbollah. And the reason is because the Obama administration, I think, didn't want anything interfering with that Iran nuclear deal. The nuclear deal was the tail that wagged the foreign policy dog of the entire Obama presidency. And I think this is just one story that we're going to learn more about what they gave up to get that nuclear deal.
All right, Dan, we're going to ask you to stay here, if you don't mind. And I think we have Peter Doocy live on Capitol Hill with an update on the tax vote. Peter.
Thank you for stopping. We're live right now with Dana Perino.
Great.
What exactly should we expect the impact of this to be? If Republicans can make it happen, what's the big impact?
Yeah, the big impact is the markets keep going up instead of tanking, right? When two senators sneezed a week ago, nervous about the vote going through, markets dipped, right? So the best thing is the real underlying economy matters. People are going to be investing in capital now. People are going to make plans right after the Senate votes. The stock market keeps soaring, and everybody's going to get more in their paycheck at home.
And another one of your colleagues, Mark Walker, is here as well from North Carolina. If I could just get you right over here, Congressman. So if Republicans can make this happen, what's the big impact?
Well, this is a huge impact. It's a great day for Republicans. It's even a better day for all Americans. To allow hardworking Americans to keep more of their money is amazing. Now, the thing about it is, these results are tangible. They're measurable. When people in February start keeping more, less is withheld from their paychecks. That is something that you can measure. It's 8 years of Obama, where the strategy was to take more from the American people. Reagan gave back, and we saw what it did. We believe we can duplicate that. Yeah.
And we've got another colleague. Man, it's like a parade here in Statuary Hall. Congressman, if you could tell us really quickly what you think the big impact was. Have you voted already?
Yeah, members are voting now. It appears to be a very successful vote, unifying Republicans, and ultimately we're going to be judged based on wage growth for average Americans and really seeing this economy take off. We're excited.
I know that you have not been here for as long as some of your colleagues, but where does this vote rank in terms of other ones that you've made?
Unequivocally, this is the high point of the 115th Congress, delivering on a promise to the American people. And when we see the results of this tax cut, we're going to see GDP growth just take off.
All right, well, we'll wait and see. Thank you very much. So, as you can see, there's a big crowd here in Statuary Hall where it is normally a big tourist stop, but today everybody is stopping to talk about this vote that they are very proud of. We might be getting a VIP coming through here just in a second as well, Dana, so we have our eyes open for that. Normally when all these Capitol Police officers come together like that, and you don't hear screaming because they're on their way to a protest, it means that there's somebody very important behind them, so we've got our eyes open for that.
It's a good thing you're tall, Peter.
Oh, yeah, I can see right over everybody in this entire place. Most of the statues, actually, Dana, it's the Vice President, Mike Pence. People are clapping right now.
Okay.
Do you have a question for the Vice President, Dana, when he comes down here?
Well,
we can
sure,
try.
I would love to know what he thinks about this being historic. I mean, he served in Congress, and this is different. This is new, and this is a big moment for the Trump administration.
And I'll try to get him.
Okay. I have all the confidence in the world in you, Peter.
Mr. Vice President, we're live with Dana Perino. Really quickly. Quick question.
Peter.
We got a thumbs up,
Okay,
which
well, that's
speaks
good.
to his state of mind on his way in, but it looked like he might be in a little bit of a rush. I don't think he wants to miss the action, and we would hate to keep him.
No, we don't blame him at all. All right, well, you'll stay there for us, and we'll get back to Dan Henninger. I wanted to ask you something about the politics of it. So I had a friend today contact me, lives in New York, votes Republican, donates to Republicans, and he said he just got off the phone with his accountant and that he's dismayed. And he said, I don't understand why I've ever supported Republicans because his accountant has said his taxes are going way up.
Right.
Does that not matter in the big scheme of things for the Republican Party?
I think it might a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of wealthy Republicans in New York probably going to have to start looking for condominiums in Miami Beach.
And spend 6 months on a day there.
Exactly. But look, there is a certain political risk. In those high tax states, people are going to, wealthy people may face tax increases. But by and large, I think the political risk is this tax reform redoes the tax code. It touches everybody. Unlike, say, Obamacare, which for all the attention that was given to it, touched a minority of Americans.
Yep, right.
This will affect everybody. And so I think the potential upside for the Republicans is huge.
Right.
Once the benefits start accruing to people, showing up in their paychecks, companies start investing, as some of these members have been suggesting, that would be a tremendous wind at the back of the party going to 2018. Look, if it fails, they will pay the price for it. Though I think there is not a lot of evidence out there at the moment that a tax cut of this size is going to fail.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it would be anything but a net plus.
Yeah, and I think the Republicans eventually going to pick up the benefit from that. And I do think the Democrats, many of them have made a poor choice here of being so inexorably opposed to everything. They have no participation whatsoever in this. And so if the economy does begin to rise, the Democrats won't be able to take any credit for it or participate in that at all.
All right, Dan, we're going to keep you here with us. And I want to introduce Michael Meehan, President and CEO of Squared Communications and former Chief of Staff for Senator Cantwell, and Alexandra Smith with America Rising. Thank you for joining us. Just an update here. We're waiting for the final tally, but it is clear that the Republicans have the votes to pass historic tax reform, and that will happen in just any minute now. So we will bring that to you live. But Michael, let me go to you. This moment for Democrats, do you think it's as bad as Nancy Pelosi said today on the floor? She said this is the worst bill to ever come to the floor of the House.
Well, I mean, that may be a hyperbole, but clearly Obamacare, when it was passed in 2010, was 10 points more popular with the American people than this bill is today. So Republicans have taken their unified government and put all their marbles on the table for a bill that's 10 points less popular than Obamacare was. And Obamacare was always a net negative popularity for 8 years. And so it's sort of the politics of this are strange because it's clear that that the American people have no interest in this. This is a big giveaway for corporations. It's a big giveaway. The proof will be in the pudding about whether people ever feel this in the middle class. But clearly the Republicans have put all their chips on the table and decided to give all the money to the corporations.
Well, it has been interesting, Alex, if I could ask you about this, because all the stats say that people feel like the economy is better. Their confidence as a consumer has improved, but the president's approval rating does hover still around between 35 and 40%, however you look at it. So maybe that doesn't matter politically necessarily, but what do you hear from Republicans, especially younger Republicans? I know you used to be the president of the college Republicans, about how they feel about this type of an accomplishment by the Republicans in Congress.
I think people are excited, and I think that, we're all disagree
Alex,
with
could I have you hold a moment? We're listening to Speaker Paul Ryan, who just announced that tax reform has passed the U.S. House of Representatives. And Dan Henninger.
Finished business is on the vote of the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Dunn, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4323 as amended, on which the ayes and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4323, a bill to promote veteran involvement in STEM education, computer science, and scientific research, and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And Dan Henninger, you see Speaker Paul Ryan there banging the gavel. Alex, let me let you finish give you a chance to answer the question that I posed earlier. It's about how the politics and approval ratings of both this bill and of the administration and of the Republican Party don't match up with how people are feeling about the economy, which is quite good.
Well, look, I think that you have to look to what the effects of this policy will be, which is that it will be more money in the wallets of the American people. I think whether you look at the increased standard deduction for individuals and for married couples, if you look at the expanded child care tax credits, there's something in this bill for everyone. And, the old saying goes that people vote with their wallets. So in 2018, I think that we might see, the fortunes start to turn on some of these approval ratings based on what people will be seeing, not just in their wallets, but really over the last year in their 401ks and other sectors of the economy.
Michael, just before you came on, Dan was talking about the possibility that you had some Senate Democrats, more moderate ones, like Manchin or Heitkamp, who are going to vote no tonight in the Senate, and that they might live to regret that if the economics pan out and people start thinking, well, the Republicans might have a better idea. Do you think that's a concern?
Well, long before this tax vote passed, the stock market was at record high. So the whole idea that the thesis is we need to pass this to keep the stock market moving, it's already had a record year or close to a record year. So some of that doesn't make a lot of sense. I do think that there will be accountability. I mean, the largest margin of people want the Democrats to be in control of Congress, 50-39 in an NBC poll. The young people you were just talking about, 69% want to be Democrats. I've been in town a long time. That is an insane number. There's no way that many people under 35 should want to be Democrats. None. But here we are, because here's where the circumstance is. It's a 48-point margin. That's insane. You never see that.
Alex, what do you think about that in terms of younger people and how they're feeling about the parties?
Well, look, I think it's important to note that actually in 2016 that President Trump garnered more of the millennial support than did Romney or McCain. So there was something a little bit different about 2016 for millennials. And, something to put my old hat back on for a second, I've always said that Republicans need to do a better job with reaching out to younger Americans. And I think that through tax reform, through more money in their pockets, that will be a demonstration of conservative principles and of what we're able to accomplish as a party. So, I think that, our problem with the with younger people has not been one of substance, but rather one of messaging.
All right, Michael and Alex, if you could stand by, I want to ask Dan Henninger about what does it mean for a party to have been so beleaguered for 11 months? They finally get to this point where they have a major legislative accomplishment. And even in Statuary Hall, we see the members talking to Peter Doocy, and they're excited, and they're like, we're united. And it's like, President Trump has been like the head coach for capitalism. What does that mean going into the next year legislatively? Will they be able to get more done having seen what it's like when they work together, or could the opposite be true?
I would be amazed if the opposite were true, though in Washington these days, you never know. I mean, they should have enjoyed what just happened to them. And you know what, Daniel, let's just sort of, if I may, as a member of the political class, say something. We should enjoy what's going on here right now. Most politics, is just grinding through things day by day. This is a huge, dramatic event on the floor of the House, all of this cheering. Tax Act of 2017 is a big deal. It's like watching a movie, and it doesn't happen very often in Washington anymore. Obamacare certainly was an example, and now we have this. And I think the Republicans should probably get swept up in this. You're going to have the same vote in the Senate tonight. They're going to go to the president's desk. He'll be sitting there in the Oval Office, surrounded by people, signing a major tax reform. And I think a lot of these Republicans who've been fighting on the margins over the past 11 months are going to decide, I'd rather be on, as you say, Team Trump's winning side rather than standing outside carping about it all the time.
We're looking there at a live look at the Capitol. We expect House Republican leaders to come to the podium, and we will bring that to you live. In the meantime, Michael, what do you think the Democrats' play will be going forward as they head to this big fight about end-of-year spending?
Well, I mean, clearly health care is at the top
Michael,
of the agenda.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to hold you there. I apologize. Big breaking news hour. Sarah Sanders at the White House has just started. Let's listen in.
By any measure, a historic year. Nearly 1.7 million new jobs have been created, and the unemployment rate has fallen to 4.1%, the lowest rate in 17 years. The stock market reached a record high more than 60 times and closed above 24,000 for the first time in history. We've rolled back 22 regulations for every one new regulation, saving taxpayers over $8 billion and liberating America's economy from the grip of bloated government. We've withdrawn from or began renegotiating the trade deals that once threatened to destroy American industry and shipped our jobs around the world. We finally set up our nation on a path to not only energy independence, but energy dominance. We approved the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines, directed the EPA to end the job-killing war on coal, and upon the tax bill's passage, will have opened up ANWR to responsible energy exploration. The President has protected America's communities. We've seen the lowest level of illegal border crossings on record. We ended the Obama administration's dangerous catch-and-release policies, restoring law and order both on the border and in the interior. And we've designed and built 8 wall prototypes for the border wall. We've taken unprecedented steps to tackle America's opioids epidemic by directing the declaration of a nationwide public health emergency, and we promoted peace through strength. Under the President's leadership, ISIS has lost nearly all of its territory and its most important strongholds in Iraq and Syria. We've restored old alliances, forged new ones, begun rebuilding our military, and made it clear to the world that there is no greater ally, no more fearsome adversary than the United States of America. We've reshaped the American judiciary for generations. Justice Gorsuch was confirmed to the Supreme Court, and 22 judges have been confirmed, including a record-setting 12 circuit judges. We protected life by reinstating and expanding the Mexico City policy that protects $9 billion in U.S. taxpayer dollars from being used to fund abortion. And this evening, hopefully upon passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the President will have delivered the most significant tax cut in the history of the nation and repealed the Obamacare individual mandate. The President has delivered on promise after promise, issue after issue, time after time, and we're just getting started. As some of you may have seen yesterday, Disney World debuted its animatronic President Trump for its famed Hall of Presidents. In the President's remarks for the exhibit, which he recorded here at the White House earlier this year, he said, "From the beginning, America has been a nation defined by its people. It's why our founders began our great Constitution with 3 very simple words: we, the people." In the coming days, political analysts will write and the talking heads will discuss what this year means, what it means for the President, what it means for the Republican and Democrat parties, and for the never-ending political theater in Washington, D.C. But I would encourage everyone to take a step outside of the Beltway bubble and consider what this year means for the American people. To the forgotten men and women around our country, you are forgotten no more. This President is with you 100%, and as this year has already proven, he will never let you down. And with that, I will take your questions. John.
Two questions on tax reform, both of them quick if I could. First of all, what's the schedule for signing? I understand this may not happen until after the Christmas break.
Look, we're still working on the details of the signing, but first we want to make sure it gets passed. That's what we're focused on right now, is helping make sure we see this through to the finish in the Senate, and then we'll announce plans on what a signing would look like and where it would take place following that.
Second question, the carried interest provision. This is something this is a loophole that President Trump promised again and again and again to close. The carried interest loophole is still there in this bill. Why did the president not insist on getting rid of that?
Look, the president was focused and he laid out what his 4 biggest principles were that he wanted to make sure were part of any piece of legislation. We feel that the piece of legislation where it is now certainly answered and addressed that. That has been our focus all along and what we've continued to talk about consistently here and every time we've talked about taxes.
The president has said that this tax bill is going to cost him a fortune. It's actually not the case. How does he figure this is going to cost him a lot of money?
Look, we expect that it likely will, certainly on the personal side, could cost the president a lot of money. Again, the president's focus hasn't necessarily been at all on himself, but it's been on those 4 principles that we laid out. Number 1, and priority number 1, being that it helps the American middle class. We know that this bill does that, and that's one of the biggest reasons that the president has supported it, been engaged, and will look forward to signing it hopefully in the coming days.
But he seems to benefit from pass-through deductions, top rate tax reduction, estate tax exemption is doubled. He's going to make money on that.
Look, again, this is a tax plan that we hope benefits all Americans primarily, and priority number 1 is middle-class Americans. That has been this administration's focus. We feel like that is certainly addressed and been prioritized in this legislation, and we're going to be very excited to sign it hopefully in the coming days. Matthew?
Thanks, Sarah. Early reports are indicating that fatal Amtrak derailment out in Washington, similar to the 2015 derailment in Philadelphia, could have been prevented by positive train control. 08 mandated was supposed to be on all lines by 2015. That's been pushed back, and it's only on a quarter of passenger lines right now. Is this White House considering any steps to speed up the implementation of positive train control to stop these kinds of accidents?
Right now, we're continuing to review and investigate exactly what took place yesterday, and once we have a more detailed determination on that, we can take steps to prevent things like this from happening in the future. John?
Thanks a lot, Sarah. You ticked off a number of accomplishments that you see the president has made in this first year in office. Why are his approval ratings mired in the mid to upper 30s despite those accomplishments?
I think oftentimes because while the president and this administration has been very focused on how we can better help the American people, I think oftentimes the media is focused on other things, certainly not talking about the growing economy, certainly not talking about the crushing of ISIS, not talking about the creation of jobs. If you look at the amount of time that is spent on negative coverage of this president, 90% of the coverage is negative about this president when, as you just said, I listed off a number of things that have been pretty historic in nature in this first year. And if people were focused a lot more on those things in the media, I think that his numbers would be a lot higher. We anticipate that they're going to go up as more and more of these things continue to happen, and particularly as more and more people start to feel the impact of the booming economy, the tax cuts that'll take place later tonight and go into effect in the first part of February. I think those are all things that are going to help boom our numbers.
And separately, Sarah, just if I may, Matthew Peterson, since we last met, withdrew his judicial nomination. There's been a viral video of his inability to answer some basic legal questions when he went up before his confirmation hearing. How did he sort of slip through the cracks? Why was he nominated? And are you doubling up your effort here at the White House, over at DOJ, to make sure that your judicial nominees can answer those basic questions when they go up to the confirmation hearings?
Look, the president's judicial selection process has led to a historic pace of confirmations, including 12 circuit court justices and a Supreme Court justice. Every administration has individuals that don't go all the way through the process. We've had 60 nominees and only 3 that haven't gone through this process. That individual has withdrawn, and we're going to make sure that we fill that spot with a really strong and good qualified candidate. Dave?
Thanks. Where was the president watching when the House voted, and did you see his reaction? What did he do?
I'm not sure. I'll have to circle back with you on that. I was getting ready to come out. I was watching to make sure I didn't make you guys wait too much longer.
One thing on nominations. Can you explain, now that we're near the end of the year, why the president has submitted far fewer names to the Senate for nomination than his predecessors at this point in this term?
Look, we've been focused on filling positions as quickly as possible, but at the same time, the president has said before he doesn't think that every single position in the government needs to be filled. He's going to cut back on some of those positions. We've been focused on some of the top priority places, and we're going to continue filling out individuals. But we've also seen a massive slowdown and obstruction by the Democrats. Hopefully they'll continue to push our people through, particularly in individuals that were held up, whether it's in the judiciary.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor Sarah Sanders' briefing, but here are the House Republican leaders just after their vote, and they will be introducing Kevin Brady, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, a real champion of their efforts. Here you go.
When House Republicans began this journey, we had two goals in mind. We believed Americans deserved a tax code built for growth, for the growth of their jobs, their paychecks, and America's economy. And we believed America could leapfrog back into the lead pack as the best place on the planet for the next new job and that next new business. Today, we achieved those goals. And as we go forward, I want American taxpayers to think of 3 dates and keep them in mind. New Year's Day, America will have a new tax code for a new era of American prosperity. In February, on February 1st, look at your paychecks, because you'll see the tax relief we delivered today. And on April 15th, you will, for the last time, file your taxes under this horrible, terrible tax code that we're putting behind us for the American people. Together we did this without the leadership of our House, especially our Speaker, Paul Ryan, but of the work that's been done by the American people through their representatives. We're delivering a new tax code.
I want to thank Chairman Brady for the work that he has done bringing this conference together, going through the conference report with the Senate, and having this bill pass the floor today. It'll move over to the Senate, and it will pass today and become law. So for every American that had fought for a pay raise, for every parent, for everyone who ever dreamed of opening a small business or being an entrepreneur, I want you to know we heard you. We heard you loud and clear. That's what this bill is about. It's about the American comeback, the opportunity to let you keep more of what you earn, to make America competitive around the world, and to make sure small businesses have an ability to compete. It's going to be the lowest rate they've seen in 40 years. The family's going to double their standard deduction. But come February, check your check, because you will get a raise in your payroll of what you're going to see based upon what happened today.
This is an historic day. If you're somebody who's been working really hard and you just want to keep more of your hard-earned money, this is an historic day for you. If you're an American like those of us here that are tired of seeing jobs shipped overseas because America had the highest corporate tax rate in the industrialized world and we couldn't compete anymore, this is an historic day for you to finally be able to see those jobs come back to America. If you're somebody who's been sitting on the sidelines after 8 years of sluggish growth in an economy that was growing at less than 2%, and so you just gave up looking for work, this is an historic day for you, because now you finally have that shot at the American dream again, because we're building a tax code that works for families and that creates jobs, makes America competitive again, and allows hardworking families to put more money back in their pockets. There was a lot of hard work that went into this. Chairman Brady, Speaker Ryan, the Ways and Means Committee, and all the conferees who worked tirelessly for months. And our attitude from the beginning was failure is not an option, because the American people have been waiting too long for this relief. Look, the last time something this historic happened was in 1986. And when Ronald Reagan was signing that bill into law, he talked about how hard the journey was, but how he never gave up. And back then the headline read that this was a day that many thought was not possible, but ultimately became inevitable. Well, today the impossible became the inevitable again.
Well, it's a hopeful day. It's a brighter day.